I never thought the woman who welcomed me into her family with open arms could hide something so dark, all because of a letter I wasn't supposed to see. Picture this. You're trying to be the perfect son-in-law, doing everything to keep the peace, and then, bam, you stumble across something that flips your whole world upside down. That's where my story starts, and trust me, it's a wild ride. My name's Jake, and I married Emily about a year ago. We met in college, fell hard, and tied the knot right after graduation. Emily's family seemed like the dream package, especially her mom, Linda. From the jump, Linda treated me like her own son. She'd cook these massive Sunday dinners, always saving me the biggest slice of pie. "Jake, you're too skinny," she'd say, piling my plate high. Neighbors would whisper about how lucky I was to have a mother-in-law who didn't meddle or nag, and for a while I believed it. Life felt good, almost too good. Emily and I moved into a small apartment about 10 minutes from her parents' place. It was close enough to visit, but far enough to have our own space. Linda would drop by sometimes, always with a casserole or some excuse to check on us. At first, it was sweet. She'd sit on our couch, sipping coffee, asking about my job at the auto shop, or Emily's new gig at the library. Normal stuff, right? But then, little things started to feel off. It started with the mail. See, Linda had this habit of picking up our letters whenever she stopped by. "Oh, I was passing the mailbox," she'd say, handing us a stack of bills and junk flyers. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was just being helpful. But one day, I noticed something weird. I was expecting a package, a new set of tools I'd ordered for work. Tracking said it was delivered, but when I asked Linda about it, her face changed. Just for a second, but I caught it. A flicker of something uneasy. "Haven't seen it," she said, too quick, then changed the subject. The package showed up a week later, no explanation. I brushed it off, but it stuck with me. Then there were the phone calls. Linda started stepping outside to take calls whenever she was at our place. She'd lower her voice, cupping the phone like she didn't want us to hear. One time, I overheard her say, "Just keep it quiet for now." My stomach twisted. Who was she talking to? Emily didn't seem to notice. She'd just laugh and say, "Mom's always been private." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The real shift came a few months ago. Emily and I had been saving up to buy a house, and Linda offered to help with the down payment. We were over the moon. Her generosity felt like a blessing. But after that, she started acting distant. She'd cancel plans last minute, saying she was busy. When she did come over, she'd barely look me in the eye. I'd ask her how she was doing, and she'd give me these short, clipped answers. "Fine, Jake. Just fine." It was like I'd done something wrong, but I had no clue what. Emily noticed it too, but she didn't want to push. "Mom's probably stressed," she'd say. "Maybe it's work or something." Linda ran a small bakery downtown, and yeah, business could get hectic. But this felt personal. I started wondering if I'd messed up somehow. Maybe I forgot to thank her enough for the money, or maybe she didn't like how I was treating Emily. I racked my brain, replaying every conversation, but nothing added up. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday, and Linda had invited us over for dinner. Emily was running late from work, so I showed up early to help set the table. Linda was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of chili, humming to herself. Everything seemed normal, almost like old times. I offered to grab some plates, and she pointed me to the dining room cabinet. That's when I saw it. A small wooden box tucked behind a stack of napkins. It wasn't locked, just sitting there like it was waiting to be found. I don't know why, but my gut told me to open it. Inside was a bundle of letters, tied with a red ribbon. The envelopes were old, yellowed at the edges, addressed to someone named Michael. No last name, no return address. My hands shook as I pulled one out. The handwriting was Linda's. I'd recognize her loopy cursive anywhere. I shouldn't have read it, but I couldn't stop myself. The first line hit me like a punch. "I've kept your secret all these years, but it's eating me alive." My heart was pounding. What secret? Who was Michael? I flipped through the stack. There were dozens of letters, some dated back 20 years. I heard Linda's footsteps behind me and shoved the box back, my pulse racing. She walked in, smiling, but her eyes darted to the cabinet. "Everything okay, Jake?" she asked, her voice tight. I nodded, mumbling something about the plates, but I could barely think straight. My mind was screaming. What was she hiding? And why was she still writing to this guy? Dinner was a blur. Emily showed up and we all sat around the table, but I couldn't focus. Linda was acting normal, too normal, cracking jokes, passing the cornbread. But every time she looked at me, I felt like she knew I'd seen something. I wanted to tell Emily, but what was I supposed to say? "Hey, your mom's got a stash of creepy letters to some dude named Michael?" I didn't even know what it meant yet. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. Emily was out cold next to me, but my brain wouldn't shut off. Those letters, they weren't just old memories. Linda was still sending them. I'd seen a postmark from last month. Whoever this Michael was, he wasn't just a ghost from her past. He was someone she was still connected to, someone she was keeping from us. And the way she wrote, like she was carrying a burden, it scared me. What kind of secret could be so heavy it followed her for decades? I knew I had to find out more, but part of me was terrified of what I'd uncover. Linda wasn't just my mother-in-law. She was the heart of our family. If she was hiding something this big, what did that mean for Emily? For us? I stared at the ceiling, my stomach in knots, wondering if I'd just stumbled into something I'd regret. And as the hours ticked by, one question kept clawing at me. Who was Michael, and what was Linda so desperate to keep buried? I couldn't shake it. The weight of those letters, the way Linda's handwriting trembled on the page. It was like I'd cracked open a door I wasn't supposed to touch, and now something dark was seeping through. Hey everyone, it's me again, diving back into this mess that's been haunting me. If you're just catching up, I found a box of letters in my mother-in-law Linda's house. Letters to some guy named Michael, full of secrets she's been carrying for years. I didn't tell my wife, Emily, that night. I couldn't. How do you drop a bomb like that without knowing what's really going on? But let me tell you, keeping it to myself was eating me alive. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd barely slept. Emily was already in the kitchen, humming as she made coffee. She looked so happy, so clueless about the storm brewing in my head. I wanted to blurt it all out, about the box, the letters, the way Linda's voice had tightened when she caught me near the cabinet. But every time I opened my mouth, I froze. What if I was wrong? What if this was nothing, and I was just blowing it out of proportion? I mean, Linda was family. She'd been good to us, mostly. So I swallowed it down and tried to act normal. That day, I went to work at the auto shop, but my mind wasn't on the cars. Every bolt I tightened, every tire I checked, I kept seeing those words. It's eating me alive. What could Linda have done that was so bad she couldn't let it go? Was Michael an ex? A friend? Someone she'd hurt? My imagination was running wild, and by the time I got home, I was a wreck. Emily noticed right away. "You okay, babe?" she asked, brushing her hand on my arm. I mumbled something about a long day, but her eyes lingered on me. She knew something was up. That week, things got weirder. Linda started calling Emily more than usual, short, random check-ins that didn't feel so random. "Just making sure you're eating right," she'd say, or, "Don't work too hard at the library." Emily thought it was sweet, but to me, it felt like Linda was keeping tabs, like she was nervous about something. I started paying closer attention to her visits, her words, even her expressions. And the more I watched, the more I saw cracks in that perfect mom act she'd been playing. One evening, Linda came over unannounced, which wasn't like her. She had this big smile, but her hands were fidgety, twisting the strap of her purse. She said she'd brought us some leftovers from the bakery, but then she lingered, asking all these questions. How was work? What were our plans for the weekend? Had we gotten any strange mail lately? That last one hit me hard. My heart started pounding, but I played it cool. "Nope, just the usual," I said, watching her face. Her smile didn't budge, but her eyes darted away. She knew I'd seen something. I was sure of it. After she left, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told Emily I was going for a walk to clear my head, but really, I needed to think. I paced our neighborhood, the streetlights buzzing overhead, trying to piece it together. Why was Linda so obsessed with our mail? Was she worried I'd find another letter? Or was she sending more, hoping I wouldn't notice? I remembered how she'd brushed off that missing package, how quick she'd been to change the subject. It wasn't just paranoia. This was real. When I got back, Emily was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I sat next to her, my leg bouncing like crazy. I wanted to tell her everything, but I needed more proof, so I started digging. The next day, while Emily was at work, I went through our mailbox. Every scrap of paper we hadn't tossed. Nothing stood out, no mystery letters, no clues. But then I remembered something. Linda's bakery. She spent most of her days there, and if she was hiding anything, that's where it'd be. I felt like a creep, but I drove to the bakery anyway. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind where the bell above the door jingles too loud. Linda was behind the counter, frosting cupcakes, and for a second, she looked like the mom I thought I knew, warm, hard-working, harmless. But when she saw me, her smile faltered. "Jake, what are you doing here?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. I made up some excuse about grabbing pastries for Emily, but my eyes were scanning the place. There was a back office, barely visible through a cracked door. If Linda was keeping secrets, that's where they'd be. I lingered as long as I could, pretending to decide between donuts and croissants, but Linda stayed glued to the counter, watching me. I left empty-handed, my gut churning. I wasn't giving up, though. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I checked Emily's phone. She was asleep, and her phone was just sitting there on the nightstand. I scrolled through her texts with Linda, looking for anything weird. Most of it was normal. Recipes, random emojis, mom stuff. But one message stopped me cold. It was from a month ago, Linda to Emily. "Don't let Jake stress you out. Some men don't know their place." My blood ran cold. What did that mean? Was Linda talking about me? Had she been planting doubts in Emily's head this whole time? I put the phone down, my hands shaking. I felt betrayed, like the ground was slipping out from under me. Linda wasn't just hiding letters. She was talking behind my back, maybe even turning Emily against me. I thought back to all those little moments, the cold looks, the dodged questions, the way she'd shut down whenever I brought up the future. It was like she'd been building a wall between us, and I'd been too blind to see it. The next few days were torture. I kept up the act, smiling at Emily, joking at work, but inside I was spiraling. I started noticing things I'd ignored before, like how Emily would get quiet whenever I mentioned Linda, or how she'd change the subject if I asked about her family. Was she in on it too? No, that was crazy, right? But doubt has a way of creeping in, and once it's there, it's hard to shake. Then came the breaking point. It was a Saturday, and Emily and I were supposed to meet Linda for lunch at her house. I was dreading it, but I couldn't back out without raising flags. When we got there, Linda was in rare form, chatty, almost manic, like she was trying too hard to seem normal. We sat down to eat, and everything was fine until I mentioned the bakery. I don't know why I said it. Maybe I was testing her, but I asked, "You ever get tired of running that place alone? Maybe you need a partner." The room went quiet. Linda's fork froze halfway to her mouth, and Emily shot me a look I couldn't read. Then Linda laughed, but it was sharp, like glass. "A partner? No, Jake. I manage just fine. Always have." Her tone was ice, and for the first time, I saw something raw in her eyes. Anger, maybe fear. Emily tried to smooth it over, babbling about the food, but the damage was done. The rest of lunch was painful, every word heavy with things unsaid. As we were leaving, Linda pulled me aside. Emily was already at the car, and it was just the two of us in the hallway. She grabbed my arm, her grip tighter than I expected. "Jake," she said, her voice low, "don't go poking around where you don't belong." My stomach dropped. She didn't mention the letters, but she didn't have to. Her eyes said it all. She knew I was on to her, and she wasn't happy about it. I drove home in silence, Emily staring out the window. My mind was racing, but one thing was clear. Linda wasn't just hiding a secret. She was protecting it, and she'd do whatever it took to keep it buried. I glanced at Emily, her face soft in the fading light, and my heart ached. I didn't know how much longer I could keep this from her, or what it'd do to us when the truth came out. But as we pulled into our driveway, I made a choice. I wasn't backing down, not until I knew who Michael was, and why Linda was so desperate to keep him in the shadows. Linda's words echoed in my head like a warning shot. Don't go poking around where you don't belong. But the thing is, once you've seen the edge of a secret that big, there's no turning back. What's good, everyone? It's me, diving deeper into this tangled mess with my mother-in-law, Linda, and those letters that flipped my life upside down. If you've been following along, you know I found a stash of letters to some guy named Michael, hidden in Linda's house. You know she's been acting shady, watching me, warning me, maybe even turning my wife, Emily, against me. After that lunch where she grabbed my arm and practically threatened me, I was done playing nice. I needed answers, no matter how ugly they were. The drive home from Linda's was dead quiet. Emily stared out the window, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater, a nervous habit I hadn't seen in months. I wanted to ask her what was wrong, but my own head was spinning. Linda's grip on my arm, her voice low and sharp. It wasn't just a warning. It was fear. She was scared I'd dig too deep, and that only made me more determined to find out why. That night, I couldn't sleep. Emily crashed early, probably drained from whatever vibe had choked that lunch, but I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept circling back to the letters. I've kept your secret all these years, but it's eating me alive. What kind of secret sticks with you for decades? Was it a crime? A betrayal? Something worse? And why was Linda still writing to this Michael guy, mailing letters like it was 1995? I needed to see those letters again. Not just a glance, but every word, every date, every clue. The next morning, I called in sick to the auto shop. Emily was already gone for work, so I had the apartment to myself. I knew going back to Linda's house was a bad idea. She'd skin me alive if she caught me snooping. But the bakery was another story. She'd be there all day, and that back office I'd glimpsed, that was my best shot. I grabbed my keys, my heart pounding like I was about to rob a bank, and drove downtown. The bakery was busy when I got there. Morning rush, people grabbing coffee and bagels. Linda was at the counter, all smiles, chatting up customers like nothing was wrong. I hung back, pretending to check my phone, waiting for my chance. When she finally ducked into the kitchen, I slipped behind the counter and through the office door. It was a cramped room, stacked with papers, flour bags, and a dusty old computer. My eyes went straight to the desk. If Linda was hiding anything, it'd be here. I rifled through drawers, my hands shaking. Bills, receipts, nothing juicy, until I found it. A locked metal box shoved under a pile of invoices. It was small, heavy, like it was meant to keep something safe. I didn't have the key, but I wasn't leaving without answers. I grabbed a paperclip, bent it, and started picking the lock. Something I'd learned as a dumb kid messing around with bike chains. It took forever, my palms sweating, but finally it clicked open. Inside were more letters. Dozens of them, some old, some new, all to Michael. I stuffed a few in my jacket, my pulse racing. I was about to grab more when I heard the door creak. Linda stood there, her face white as a ghost. "Jake," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing?" I froze, the letters burning a hole in my pocket. There was no talking my way out of this. "I know about Michael," I blurted, my voice louder than I meant. Her eyes widened, and for a second I thought she might cry. But then her face hardened, and she stepped closer, shutting the door behind her. "You have no idea what you're messing with," she hissed. "This isn't your business." I stood my ground, even though my legs felt like jelly. "It is when it's tearing my family apart," I shot back. "Who is he, Linda? Why are you hiding this?" She didn't answer. Instead, she lunged for the box, snatching it from the desk. I grabbed her wrist, gently but firm, and for a moment we just stared at each other, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. Then she yanked free and stormed out, clutching the box like her life depended on it. I didn't follow. I couldn't. My head was screaming, but my body wouldn't move. I drove home in a daze, the stolen letters heavy in my jacket. When I got there, I locked myself in the bathroom and read them. They were worse than I'd imagined. One, dated 10 years ago, said, "I can't forgive myself for what I did to you, Michael. But I can't tell them either." Another, from last month. "He's asking questions now. I don't know how much longer I can keep this quiet." My stomach churned. He? Was that me? Had Linda been watching me this whole time, waiting for me to slip up? I didn't tell Emily when she got home. I couldn't. Not yet. But things were different now. I was short with her, snapping over dumb stuff like dishes or the TV volume. She'd look at me, hurt, and I'd hate myself for it. But I was drowning. The letters were all I could think about. I started following Linda's routine, noting when she left for the bakery, when she came home. I even checked her trash one night, desperate for anything. More letters, a name, an address. Nothing. Then came the fight. It was a week after the bakery showdown, and Emily had invited Linda over for dinner. I didn't want her in our house, but I couldn't say no without spilling everything. The whole night was a tightrope. Linda was polite, but her eyes kept flicking to me, like she was waiting for me to crack. Emily was oblivious, chatting about work, but the tension was suffocating. Then, out of nowhere, Linda brought up the future. Our plans for kids, a house, all that. "You two deserve a good life," she said, but it sounded hollow, like she was reciting lines. I couldn't take it. "What's that supposed to mean?" I snapped. Emily frowned, confused, but Linda just stared at me, her jaw tight. "I'm just saying I want what's best," she said, slow, deliberate. That's when I lost it. "Best for who, Linda? You? Michael? Who are you really looking out for?" The room went dead. Emily dropped her fork, her face pale. "Jake, what are you talking about?" she asked, her voice small. Linda stood up, her chair scraping the floor. "You're out of line," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't know anything." But I was too far gone. "I know enough," I shouted. "I know you're lying to us, sneaking around, writing to some guy like it's a double life." Emily gasped, her hand over her mouth. Linda's face crumpled, and for a second I thought she'd break. But then she turned to Emily, her voice cold. "You need to get your husband under control," she said, and walked out, slamming the door. Emily turned to me, tears in her eyes. "What was that, Jake? Who's Michael?" I wanted to explain, to tell her everything, the letters, the bakery, the secrets. But my throat closed up. All I could say was, "I'm trying to protect us." She shook her head, her voice breaking. "Protect us from what? My mom? You're scaring me." She grabbed her coat and left, saying she needed air. I stood there, alone in our apartment, the silence louder than any fight. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. I'd pushed too far, and now everything was falling apart. But the worst was yet to come. The next morning, Emily came back, her eyes red from crying. She sat me down, her voice barely above a whisper. "I talked to Mom," she said. "She told me about Michael." My heart stopped. I braced myself, expecting the worst. A confession, a scandal, something to shatter us. But what she said next was so much worse. "Michael was her brother," she said. "He died 20 years ago. She writes to him because she blames herself for what happened." I sat there, stunned, as Emily's words sank in. Linda wasn't hiding a lover or a crime. She was grieving. But if that was true, why the secrecy? Why the threats? And why did those letters feel so alive, like Michael was still out there, waiting for her next move? I looked at Emily, her face raw with pain, and realized I'd just torn open a wound I didn't understand. But something told me this wasn't the whole story, and I wasn't ready to let it go. Emily's words hit me like a freight train. Michael was Linda's brother, gone for 20 years, and she was writing to him because she couldn't let go of the guilt. But even as she said it, something didn't sit right. Like I was holding half a puzzle, and the missing pieces were still out there, taunting me. Hey everyone, it's me, wrapping up this wild ride that's had me questioning everything. My marriage, my family, even my own gut. If you've been with me from the start, you know I found those letters, confronted Linda, and blew up my life trying to figure out what she was hiding. Now, with Emily sitting across from me, tears streaking her face, I was supposed to believe it was just grief. A dead brother, a broken sister, case closed. But my heart wouldn't let it rest. Not yet. After that fight, things between me and Emily were fragile, like walking on cracked ice. She barely spoke to me for days, her eyes carrying this mix of hurt and confusion. I'd gone from her protector to the guy who'd accused her mom of… what, exactly? I didn't even know anymore. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Linda's story, the one she'd fed Emily, wasn't the whole truth. Those letters weren't just memories. They were urgent, alive, like she was still reaching for someone who could answer back. I gave Emily space, but I couldn't stop digging. I pulled out the letters I'd taken from the bakery, spreading them across our kitchen table when she was at work. Reading them again, I noticed things I'd missed before. The older ones, from years back, were heavy with sorrow. Linda apologizing, begging Michael to forgive her for that night. But the newer ones, they were different, sharper. One, dated just weeks ago, said, "I can't keep lying for you, not anymore." Lying for him? If Michael was dead, who was she talking to? My head spun. Either Linda was losing it, or there was more to this than Emily knew. I started piecing together what I could about Michael. Emily had never mentioned a brother, which was weird now that I thought about it. I asked her about him one night, careful not to sound like I was accusing anyone. She was curled up on the couch, a blanket over her knees, and her face tightened when I brought it up. "Mom doesn't talk about him," she said. "It's too painful. He was in a car accident when I was a kid. That's all I know." Her voice was flat, like she'd locked that door a long time ago. I didn't push, but her answer only made me hungrier for the truth. I started searching online, old news articles, obituary records, anything about a Michael connected to Linda's family. It wasn't easy. Linda's maiden name wasn't something we'd ever discussed, and Emily wasn't exactly handing out family secrets. But after hours of scrolling through archives, I found it. A small article from 20 years ago about a fatal crash outside town. Michael Harper, 25, killed instantly when his car veered off the road. No other vehicles involved, no witnesses. The report mentioned a sister, Linda, as his only surviving family. My stomach twisted. It was real. He was gone. But why did Linda's letters feel like he wasn't? I kept digging, cross-referencing names, dates, anything I could find. That's when I stumbled on something that stopped me cold. A blog post, buried deep in a local forum, dated 5 years back. Someone claiming to be a friend of Michael's wrote that the crash wasn't an accident, that there was more to the story the police never followed up on. The post was vague, no hard proof, but it mentioned Linda by name, saying she'd disappeared after the funeral, cutting off everyone who'd known her brother. My hands shook as I read it. Disappeared? Linda had been here, raising Emily, running her bakery. Or had she? I didn't know what to do with it. Part of me wanted to confront Linda again, demand the truth, but the last time I'd pushed, I'd nearly lost Emily. So I did something risky. I tracked down the person who'd written the post. It took some sleuthing, but I found a name and a phone number. When I called, a woman answered, her voice wary. I told her I was married to Linda's daughter, that I needed to understand what happened to Michael. She hesitated, then said, "Meet me tomorrow. I'll tell you what I know." The next day, I met her at a diner on the edge of town. Her name was Sarah, mid-40s with tired eyes and a nervous habit of stirring her coffee too long. She said she'd known Michael in high school, that they'd stayed friends until the end. He wasn't just some reckless kid. she told me. That crash. It didn't add up. Michael was careful, sober. And Linda, she was there that night. She told the cops she wasn't, but I saw her car near the road hours before they found him. My heart pounded. What are you saying? I asked. Sarah leaned in, her voice low. I'm saying Linda lied. Maybe she didn't mean for it to happen, but she was part of it. After he died, she shut everyone out. Me, his friends, anyone who asked questions. Those letters you found? I don't think she's writing to a ghost. I think she's writing to herself, trying to justify what she did. I drove home in a fog, Sarah's words burning in my brain. Linda, part of Michael's death? It was too much to process. When I got back, Emily was waiting, her arms crossed. Where were you? She asked, her voice sharp. I couldn't lie. Not anymore. I told her everything. The letters, the bakery, Sarah, the crash. Her face went from anger to shock to something I couldn't read. You're obsessed, Jake, she said, her voice breaking. You're tearing us apart over something that's done. She left again, saying she needed to stay with a friend for a few days. I didn't stop her. I couldn't. But I wasn't done. I went to Linda's house that night, my nerves on fire. She answered the door, looking older than I'd ever seen her, like the fight had drained something vital. I know about Michael, I said, no preamble. I know you were there that night. What happened, Linda? What are you hiding? For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then she stepped aside, letting me in. We sat in her living room, the same one where we'd eaten Sunday dinners, laughed, felt like family. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. Michael wasn't supposed to die, she said. We fought that night, about money, about his choices. I was angry, said things I didn't mean. He stormed out, got in his car. I followed him, trying to stop him, but I was too late. He lost control, and she choked, tears falling. I told the police I wasn't there because I was ashamed. I've carried it ever since. I sat there, numb. Wasn't murder, wasn't some grand conspiracy, just a sister who'd lost her brother and couldn't forgive herself. The letters? They're how I talk to him, she said. How I keep him close. The newer ones, the ones that sounded so urgent, were her wrestling with telling Emily the truth, knowing it'd break her daughter's heart. I left Linda's house feeling heavy, like I'd been carrying her guilt too. When Emily came home a few days later, I told her what Linda had said. We cried together, for Michael, for Linda, for us. Emily went to her mom's, and they talked, really talked, for the first time in years. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. As for me, I took a step back. I'd chased the truth so hard I'd almost lost what mattered. My wife, my home. Linda and I aren't close now, but we're trying. She still writes her letters and I don't ask about them anymore. Some wounds need their own space to heal. Looking back, I realized this whole thing wasn't just about secrets. It was about trust, about family, about what we carry when we think no one's watching. I don't have all the answers, and maybe I never will. But I've learned something. Sometimes the truth isn't a big reveal. It's a quiet moment, a hand reaching out, a chance to start again. So here's my question for you. What would you do if you found a secret that could change everything? Would you dig, or would you let it lie? Let me know because I'm still figuring it out myself.